Welcome to Hockey Sense, everybody. Hope you're doing well. I know you're used to getting Hockey Sense brought to you by First Community on Fridays, but we're doing it on a Saturday with trade deadline yesterday. I mean, it was just a crazy, crazy day. Hopefully you can see me okay. I know the sun is coming in. Jammer's going to join us here in a few minutes, but he told me before, don't let them see your bed in the background when you're in a hotel. See, like if you see that, there's the bed. Probably looks better that way, but better light. Great to have you with us. This is going to be a relatively quick show, quicker than usual. Not bringing on any other guests. We're not going to break down the entire trade deadline, although we won't go through it, certainly from a Blues perspective, and look at some of the other bigger deals that took place around the league and focus on this team right now, who all of a sudden is, I mean, they're winning games, but it's been a crazy 38, 72 hours for the St. Louis Blues, and we're going to talk all about it here, not only with Jamal, but I want to get into it as well. First off, we have business to take care of. First Community brings us Hockey Sense each and every week from Half Coast Studios, man. We love our friends at Half Coast Studios. Alex, Aiden, we got Maddie on the ones and twos. Everyone there's Maddie from the Camera Strip podcast, and he's hooking it up today on Hockey Sense. First Community, baby, America's best credit union, and you know that, right? Winning isn't just everything, but it sure is nice. It sure is nice. We know that. Winning's not everything, but it is nice. First Community just announced as a winner of America's Best Regional Credit Unions by Newsweek Magazine and Plant Insights Group. You gotta be kidding me. This was a survey of over 66,000 individuals, included over 140,000 reviews of regional banks and credit unions. So a lot of competition. Only one can come out on top, and that was First Community. You gotta love that. Only one credit union in St. Louis received this honor, and there's a reason for that. Come find out why. Stop by a First Community branch today. I always tell people, sign your son or daughter up for the Little Bruce program. It's the best way to get your son or daughter introduced into the game of ice hockey. So do it and do it today. First Community. No one supports hockey in St. Louis more than First Community. We had casino night with the Blues recently, brought to you by First Community. The Blues Hall of Fame, brought to you by First Community. So again, we appreciate Glenn Barks, his commitment to supporting the game, Laura, Alfalt, everybody over there at First Community. Glad to have you with us once again here this week on Hockey Sense. From Anaheim, we just got in last night, really late, about 1:30 in the morning after a victory yesterday over a team that needed a win in San Jose. San Jose is a good team. It's amazing, though, how much Macklin Celebrini just drives that entire team. I mean, when he's not on the ice, they just look, When he's on the ice, all of a sudden, things are happening with Macklin Celebrini. I'll get into that with Jamal because he does a lot of their games as part of their broadcast. So we'll get his take on San Jose in terms of the game last night, maybe a little bit more. But the Blues won in Seattle. Prior to that, they won in Minnesota. This is the first time all year they've won 3 games in a row, but too little, too late, most likely. They're still, 10 points out of a playoff spot. So I don't think we're thinking playoffs. Rotor's Diamonds, get that special someone, something special in your life from Lerner's Diamonds, baby. Say hi to Mike and Jimmy Lerner when you go in there. You can walk in with a $100,000 budget or a $100 budget, and guess what? You're going to get treated exactly the same at Lordo's Diamonds. So big shout out to everybody at Lordo's Diamonds, right next to Truffles in the heart of Ladue. You can give them a call if you want, 314-432-8008. LordosDiamonds.com, that's the website. But 314-432-8008. Check out their incredible selection. It's good stuff for men, too. Great watches, chains, rings, whatever it is you're looking for. But this is the best selection of engagement rings in the area. If you're looking to pop that question, head into Loro's Diamonds and do it today. Blue Note Roofing, are you kidding me? David Novak, this guy was paying attention to trade deadline day, just like all of us were. Crazy day here. Not necessarily around the league. I think there were 20 trades, 33 players. It's a little bit down year in comparison to what we've seen over the course of the last 5 years or so and what those trends look like. I think the average was around 22, a little over 22 trades per trade deadline day, with about 36 players moving this year, 20 trades. I think 33 players moved. Not many significant pieces, though. With the salary cap going up, I keep saying this, all the teams are going to find ways to keep their players. They don't have to move on from them. And you'll see more and more players stay with their teams. And this is going to be the trend now moving forward. But Blemo Roofing, wind or hail damage, whatever it is, gutters, soffit, fascia, siding, or whatever it is you need, you can get it from our friends over there at Blue Note Roofing. Call David Novak and call him today, 314-920-5713. For David Novak, 314-920-5713. And Dirt Cheap Fun Fund, your one-stop party shop, baby. Don't sleep on their party goods and their paper goods. All the decorations, everything else you need, you can get at Dirt Cheap. Plus, they've got an incredible app. All the great deals that you're looking for are on the app. So you have to download the app to get the deals. They're so good they call them steals. But if you just walk into a Dirt Cheap location, you may not find the same type of deals or specials that you will get when you download the app. Plus, you can get delivery. If you live within 10 miles of a Dirt Cheap location, you get free delivery by using the promo code BLUES. Are you kidding me? So download the app and do it today with Dirt Cheap Fun Fund, your one-stop party shop, baby. Nobody does it like the Wallace family over there at Dirt Cheap, taking St. Louis to the next level, one dirt cheap at a time. Big shout out to the Wallace family. All right, play deadline day. I want to start off with Colton Parayko because that was kind of crazy. Blues had a deal in place. Now it's about this investigation as to who leaked it. I mean, we needed to have like a full-on 30 for 30, seriously, to find out who leaked it. But I do wonder, I think it's being completely overblown about the leak. Like, who gives a shit at the end of the day? I don't. Because I've been in this business for a long time. I don't break news regarding the Blues like I did for 15 years prior to working in television. Obviously, things change, and so maybe that's not as important. I do like advancing stories though, and obviously, I'll give my opinion. I can't say everything I know all the time, but in this particular case, okay, so it got out. People were upset. I don't think the players liked that it got out. They didn't like it when it got out with Torrey Krug either several years ago. They got upset about that. So I can't tell the players how they should feel, but nobody seemed to react when the trade got out about Mackenzie Weegar going from Calgary and obviously moving on from the Flames and going to Utah. That trade got out, although I don't know if we knew all the specific pieces that were going from Utah to Calgary. Um, and then you had the Jamal Mayers situation where he turned down a trade to Detroit. I think he didn't even play in a game. That trade got out. Again, I don't know if we knew all the specific details of the trade, but we did know that there was a trade on the table to send Tyler Myers from Vancouver to Detroit. He wouldn't want to go there. And people were saying, well, there's no chance he would go to Dallas. He wouldn't go to Dallas. How are they going to do that? But that's the other place he wanted to go. Teams hand out these no trade clauses. And I don't know if they do. I'm sure sometimes they do. But you can't get emotional when a player exercises his right to utilize that no trade clause. Typically, you've got to be a good player to get a no trade clause. And when a team comes to you and asks you if you want to accept the trade and they say no, you just got to move on. It is what it is. There were other players in the Blues, I think, who were presented with trades and were elected to turn those down. I know there's reports of that being out, and those are accurate. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think when a player has a no trade clause, it is what it is. The player's either going to say, yes, I'm interested, or no. And I don't think Braden Shen necessarily wanted to go. He didn't have much time to think about it. I do think it worked in his favor, the fact that Patrick Waugh, a Canadian icon, Matthew Darsh, obviously the general manager of the Islanders, and the entire team, and they've got a good group of veteran guys. And, Matty Martin was there, who's a respected guy. And that's the advantage of having a guy like Matty Martin on the staff. And I think once they got in front of Braden Shen, a respectable veteran, a great guy, they were able to get him to waive his no trade clause and go. I don't know if we've ever seen anything like that where two teams are staying at the same hotel. But I ran into Braden Shen, actually. I was coming out of my hotel room, and it just so happened to be that the Islanders were staying on the same floor that I was on. It's just kind of like all of a sudden I walk past Shen, what are you hearing? That's what he say, and I think he had just found out about this potential move. He was headed down the hall to go meet with Islanders management. So obviously timing is everything. And it was funny to have that conversation with Braden Shen after the fact. But I wish him the best of luck, man. He's one of my favorite players that I've gotten to know and who have covered here in St. Louis. Great leader, great captain. that it's a turnover here in St. Louis, and at some point you got to move on from certain players if you want to get back to a championship level. If you want to rinse and repeat and bring back the same group every year, you're probably going to have similar results. But I think just by changing a couple of guys out, you can make a difference. We'll see what they do in the offseason, who they bring in, and what the roster looks like moving forward. What young guys are able to make a push to make the NHL roster sooner than later. I'm not going to make any predictions, but I would think USAC has the strongest chance of getting here the soonest of all the prospects. I know a lot of people focus on Justin Carviner, who's got 50 plus goals or whatever it is in the Quebec League, but he may need some time to go play in the American League. I mean, nothing wrong with that, obviously. So I don't know if they're going to be quick to get everybody here, all these guys. But Urasek, I think, is a guy who could certainly help the team and he can play. Um, but the Blues probably need to add a little more dynamic offensive skill, scoring ability, playmaking ability to their roster because they're limited from that standpoint. And they've got good players all around, but just in terms of that dynamic skill level that you typically see that would pop on television when you watch, or that can separate you from a number of other teams around the league. They're just lacking that a little bit right now. Um, so I don't have a problem with the trade on the surface. The Blues save money. They move out $13 million in money that's owed to Braden Shen. They bring in $4 million that's owed to Jonathan Drouin. Druin's an interesting one because he was such a highly touted prospect coming out of junior. This guy was an unreal player in the Quebec League, won a Memorial Cup. Everyone was just going crazy about this kid. He was the third overall pick back in 2013. That was the Nathan MacKinnon trade. He's good buddies with MacKinnon. Obviously played in Colorado the last couple of years. He signed a 2-year contract with the Islanders. Actually turned down more money and better deals. He could have gone elsewhere. Signed with the Islanders. Never was able to establish any real chemistry with other Islander players that he was playing with. Never seemed like it was a great fit, you know. But he did have 93 points in 120 games over 2 seasons with Colorado. Now, I know it's Colorado and there's a lot of good players, but he still found a way to produce. And that's how he got a decent deal with the Islanders. He got a 2-year contract of $4 million per. It just didn't work out, didn't fit with the Islanders. Now he comes here, he's got 1 year to prove himself for his next deal starting next season. But obviously that clock begins the final 20 games or so here in St. Louis. But I had a chance to talk to Duran yesterday. He came on with us during the second intermission during our television broadcast. I like him. Really easy guy to talk to. Veteran guy. He's been around a lot of good players. Played for some good teams. Obviously came in to the NHL with Tampa Bay. Spent a number of years at Montreal before going to Colorado. So sometimes it just doesn't fit. We've seen players come here to St. Louis and it just doesn't fit. And I think that was the case for Druin. He needed to get out of New York, and so he was able to do so. Colton Parayko. Listen, Colton Parayko's always been one of my favorites, right? And the way that went down, it was just a little bit strange. I didn't think a lot of people expected Parayko to be on the move. Um, but why would you be surprised in reality? Um, I wasn't overly surprised to see Parayko be presented with a potential trade. Now, you can talk about it getting out and all that type of stuff. It's going to happen. It's 2026. Stuff gets out. Who's responsible for it? I mean, you guys all saw the comments from Doug Armstrong. He was adamant that it didn't come from him. Um, so I think you have no choice but to believe what he's saying. If he's checking phone records and doing all of that, I mean, I don't want to go too crazy with it. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, let's be honest. I think it is a big deal if somebody in your room, your war room, is all of a sudden leaking stuff out to the media. That shouldn't happen. It's one thing to maybe give a little bit of confirmation here or there, give a scouting report on a player. But, when it's affecting lives and people, you got to be careful with that. So everyone's pointing the finger at St. Louis. They say it's not them. The Doug Armstrong goes as far as to say he checked phone records and he threatened to fire people if it was proven that it was them. It's not something Jarmo Kekalainen will do or would do. I don't know the rest of his staff that closely, but I know Mark Bergevin, he wouldn't do it. I can promise you that. Eric Stahl, I could promise you he's not doing that. So I don't know. Maybe it did come from Buffalo. But at the end of the day, does it really matter where it came from? It got out. I don't think Parayko's camp was overly thrilled about that. He thought about it. He turned it down. It's his right to turn it down. And now I think we'll all be interested to see where it goes from here. But I know there's a lot of talk right now about Buffalo, and I don't want to take cheap shots at Buffalo, but I did say it on Nick Kiprio's show. And I want to address that as well because it was on Kiprio's show on Sportsnet television when I reported that this was not nearly as much of a slam dunk or as far along as people had suggested in regards to Colton Parayko going to the Buffalo Sabres. And I got a source who said to me, hey, this, in their words, this report is premature. I wasn't focusing on Darren Drager's report. This thing kind of caught like wildfire. Everyone was presenting this like this was a done deal. And I think some people were even suggesting, hey, this is happening. Obviously it needs the players' approval. And it was almost presented as if Colton Parayko had packed his bags and he was on his way to Buffalo. So this is spur of the moment. It's during the trade deadline. I cover the St. Louis Blues. I've been covering the Blues for almost 30 years. So I get a text message that says, hey, these reports are premature. So I say that. Well, I don't think people were overly happy about that because it made it sound like I was disparaging their reporting. I wasn't disparaging anybody's reporting. I was just basically saying, hey, pump the brakes on this. I don't know where this is going, but I don't think it's going where everyone else thinks it's going. And I went on to say I didn't think that he would waive to go to Buffalo. I never thought that Colton Parayko was going to waive to go to Buffalo. Just like Robert Thomas wasn't going to waive to go to Buffalo. And Jordan Kyrou, who's got a no trade, he's not going to waive to go to Buffalo. Now when you have X number of years left on your contract, if you're going to be a rental, you got to go play in the playoffs with a quality team, a team that's got a lot of pieces, then maybe you would consider that. But when you have 4 or 5 years left in your deal, that's a big decision to make. And I love Jarmo, man. Jarmo, there's not many people in this business that I got closer to than Jarmo Kekalainen when he was here in St. Louis, man. We talked often and all the time. He was running the amateur side. At that time, the amateur side was more important than the pro side. I said that all in all, that Jarmo Kekalainen, he was the most important person in the Blues organization at the time. Other people probably didn't like to hear that, but it was true. And it proved to be true because the Blues won a Stanley Cup several years later with a lot of those players that he had a big part in drafting. Or that they moved on who he drafted, who they brought even better pieces on board, that they were able to maximize those assets to bring in different pieces. He had a big part of their success. He was the guy that was here when they were drafting the Eric Johnsons and the Alex Petrangelos and that whole group of players. So I know that Jarmo has come out and said Buffalo's a great place, and he didn't say no because he didn't want to come to Buffalo. But the reality is, what I said with Nick Kiprios was, if a player like Thomas, if a player like Colton Parayko, this would be a changing of the perception of that players have had for several years about the Buffalo Sabres, where all of a sudden a prominent player is waiving his no trade protection to go to Buffalo. We hadn't seen that in quite a while. And Buffalo hasn't always been bad. They've been bad for a long time, but they haven't always been bad. You go back to their years with Chris Drury as a player and all these other guys that they had, where they were a competitive team with Dominik Hasek, and they went to a Stanley Cup final, and they were a playoff team year in and year out. I used to love watching those Buffalo Sabres teams play. They're fun to watch, but we're a rose away from that. And let's face it, Buffalo's not the most exciting place to live unless you're from there and unless you've experienced living there, then you really have a real appreciation for the city. Much like St. Louis. You think players who are going to be free agents are just screaming to come play in St. Louis? They're not. St. Louis has a perception too until you come and play here. Look at how many players who come and play here who don't want to leave, similar to Buffalo. But I think there's an outside perception. You see it on the news. You see it when you come in as a visiting player. You're not experiencing the whole way of life. You're not seeing all the subdivisions of the suburbs and, all the qualities, the schools, the youth hockey, if you have kids and you're trying to raise your family. Everything St. Louis has to offer, the restaurants, you don't see all of that when you come in as a visiting player. You stay at the hotel, you go to the rink, you go back to the hotel, you go to the rink, and you're out. Winnipeg, similar perception. I think St. Louis has a better reputation than Winnipeg around the league with players, but I'm just trying to categorize different teams. So I know they're saying this isn't because of Buffalo, but let's face it, I think Buffalo did factor into Colton Parayko's decision to say no. Wasn't the total factor. I think the fact that he's just not ready to move on from St. Louis. This guy's, what, 100+ games away from tying Bernie Federko as the all-time games played leader. He's been in St. Louis. He's got a girlfriend who's from St. Louis. He won a Stanley Cup in St. Louis. He was drafted by St. Louis. He's never played for anybody else, and it was kind of thrown on him. Totally blindsided, surprised, and it was in his right to say no, and that's exactly what happened. So I don't think it's anything more than that. I will say this, and I know Patty Maroon, I love Patty, and he went on and he said, his girlfriend's an emo, and Emo's Pizza obviously is a legendary, iconic pizza chain, local pizza chain here in St. Louis. But I can tell you with 100% authority, that did not factor into his decision. This was not about his girlfriend or Vito's Pizza, or Emo's Pizza. Vito's Pizza is a great spot too. Vito's my boy, Vito LaFata. Go visit Vito, stop by Slew. But Emo's Pizza wasn't about Emo's, wasn't about his girlfriend. I can promise you that. Everyone's talking about that, and I understand why that would make sense to some people. But I can tell you, this decision was not made because of his girlfriend, who is an emo and related to the emo pizza family. Okay. So let's get rid of that real quick. I know it's fun. I don't want to ruin the party for everybody, but this was purely hockey related, and it was purely Colton Parayko's decision on what he wants to do and what he feels like is best for him as an NHL player in the short term and in the long term. And my feeling is, wherever you have a no trade clause, then if I was a player and I had a full no trade, guess what? You're not going to tell me where I'm going to go. I'm going to tell you where I want to go. And then if you want to trade me, you've got to go find a way to make a deal with that team. That's just the way I would approach it. And I would imagine a number of other players approach it that way too. It doesn't mean a team is doing anything wrong by going and finding a deal that makes their team and their organization better. There's nothing wrong with that, and then going to the player, but you have to be prepared that that player may not say yes, especially when it's a destination like Buffalo. You have to prepare yourself as if the player is going to say no. Almost be surprised if they were to say yes, because you just don't see too many prominent players waving to go to Buffalo unless they're from Buffalo, like an Alex Tuck, for example. I don't even know if he had to wave, but obviously he's from the area, and it was of interest of him to go there. But this wasn't about pizza. It wasn't about emos. Great story. But this is purely about Colton Parayko and what he feels like was best for him now and moving forward. He said no. And if I'm a Blues fan, I'm glad he said no. Although you would have gotten some nice pieces in return. That Merker kid, a 6'6", 6'6" defenseman, that would have been great to get that kid into the organization. I get it. But, Colton Parayko, man, he's so respected here in St. Louis. And we all have different relationships with different players and whatever. As long as Colton's here, listen, it's all good. But I don't fault the manager. I don't fault the team. And I don't fault the player. This is NHL business, baby. Everyone's got to stop getting so emotional. There's nothing wrong with a team asking a player to accept the trade. When they have a no trade, you just have to accept that the answer might be no. It is what it is. Not the first player to turn it down. Players have turned down trades who have no trade protection because it never got out. You never even knew about it. Just like I said, there's other players who did the same thing here in St. Louis. And eventually those names will get out down the road. Biggest surprise for me was John Carlson. I mean, but again, a guy who didn't have a full no trade and goes to Anaheim. I love Anaheim. I'm going to see them play tomorrow night. So John Carlson, veteran guy, we'll see what he brings to the table with the Ducks. Obviously, can help mentor some of those young players. I always wonder with a legendary player who's won a cup and been a part of that whole OV experience in Washington, what the Capitals' plan is. Would they try to re-sign John Carlson in the offseason? Nazem Kadri, he goes back to Colorado. His contract expires when he's like 50 years old, so we'll see how that plays out. But a good player, and obviously he's going to help them, and he knows Colorado. Won a cup there too, right? So bring him back for what they hope is another long Stanley Cup run. So you're hitting some moves. Justin Falk goes to Detroit. He's going to help them too. And listen, the Blues get a first round pick there. They also get a third. They get that um, the Russian prospect, um, who, listen, he's putting up some points. He's undersized. We'll see where that goes. And maybe they found something in him. But he's been pretty productive. Pochelnikov, I believe is his last name. Pretty productive player in the KHL as a young player. And but I always talk to Russian players. I always say buyer beware. Not buyer beware, but when you try to analyze a player's production in the KHL, you have to kind of understand the dynamic there. I know some people are saying, hey, he outscored Demidov from Montreal, and he's one of the highest productive players in KHL history, 22 and under. Like the 10th most points in KHL history for anybody 22 years of age and younger. And I get that, but when you're on a bad team in the KHL, you tend to get more opportunity than you do when you're on a good team. Demidov was on a top team. Luchelnikov, whatever, if I'm mispronouncing his name, I apologize. I'm in the hotel. I don't have everything with me. He apparently is on a bad team, and he's taking advantage of it. He put up some points, and we'll see where that goes. We got to see him get over here before you truly analyze him. He's not a big guy, but he's got some speed and has some legitimate skill. So maybe they found something. I think they're happy with the player that they got. But even more so with the fact that they got a first and a third. So now the Blues have 3 first-round picks. So again, they can flip this and turn this around pretty quickly. I know the first round pick they got from New York is Colorado's first round pick from the Brock Nelson trade. So it could be the last pick in the first round, basically a second round pick. But you can always package that as part of a bigger deal in an effort to help your team. So everyone take a deep breath. Everyone's feelings get hurt, man. I mean, yeah, everyone's just got to take a deep breath, man. It's business. Business is business. We're going to talk with Jamal Mayers coming up. Next, looking forward to speaking with Jammer here on Hockey Sense, brought to you by First Community. Stay with us. All right, great to have Jammer with us. I was telling our listeners before we came on, Jammer, I'm like, oh, I don't want to share my bed, see?
Oh, Jesus.
Jammer said, don't share the bed.
No one wants to do that.
So I got the window behind me, but it's kind of bringing a little bit of a glare, but it's all good. Great to have you with us as always. Listen, you spent your entire adult life in hotels and whatnot. There's a light. I wish I could turn it around. It's underneath the TV. I looked all night long, Jammer. I can't find the switch, how to turn this damn light off. So I slept in like a bright light room last night. I couldn't turn the lights off in this place.
No way. There's got to be some kind of, I would check the side of the desk,
Yeah.
the side of the furniture.
I called down to the front desk 5 times. Nobody answered all night long.
Oh, my goodness.
We didn't get in after 1 a.m. They must answer me.
Aren't you supposed to be at 5-star hotels, and isn't it a rule?
It's a nice one.
It's a good league.
When did you guys start traveling like this?
I never did commercial.
Never?
No. So I think what happened was, my first year was 96, right? Technically, my first full year was 98. But the thing is, there's probably 12 to 15 teams that flew charter back then. And so we would play against teams, Edmonton being one of them. I know for a fact they did not charter. So they would say, hey, we're staying over, or you'd know that, they were actually catching a commercial flight the next day.
Okay. Um, What about the hotels though? When did you start really staying at the Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons and all? Was that your whole career?
I feel like that started no, I think that started after '04. I think
Okay.
it came into effect where you had to be a four-star hotel. Pretty sure that's what it is.
You think that's what it is now? I think it's five-star now, baby.
Oh, it's a good league. The Never Hungry League too.
Oh my god. I know, the Blues do it right. That's one thing I will say, like, I think most teams do nowadays, maybe you can't get around it, but I'll give them credit. They take care of the players. Players have nothing to complain about. Also, Jammer, you know that.
Oh yeah. Do you guys get to eat? When I say you, I mean the media. Do you guys get to eat the pregame meal?
What do you mean by pregame? At the hotel, you mean?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, good. I'm glad. But
So
some days I wish we could.
I know. I wouldn't ask for that though, but that's their time. You mean like and like
No,
also
no.
to the hotel after games when they go and eat and we don't eat with the team
Okay,
after
this is my
games.
thought. Okay, the team eats after pregame skate, right? On the road.
Yeah.
They probably eat, I would say it's around, I would say 1 o'clock. Is that right?
I guess, yeah, when they
Let's
come back. A lot of times they're skating or rather than having 30
well,
on the
let's
grid.
let's say it ends. It definitely ends by 2.
Mhm.
In my opinion, just let the media go in at 2 so media can eat from 2 to 3. You're not in there with the players. If the players want to stay in there longer than an hour, which is not true, they want to have their nap. What take it out of your per diem and you pay $35 and you get to eat that unbelievable meal.
Yeah. A lot of times when we're flying out after the game, they'll let us eat at the rink because they always got a big spread at the rink too
There you
before
go.
we can get on the plane.
That's what a good league. It's
I
even
got
got
no
better.
I
For
got no complaints, man, no complaints. Um, what's your take on no trade clauses?
so how much time do we have? I'll tell you a funny story. Have I told you the Doug Waite story about his no trade?
You know, I was right in the middle of that too. I we
Of course
can
you
get
were.
it. I know. Well, you know how it was back then, Jen. I love seeing everyone from your era, man, because it was so much fun to cover, and you guys were so great, man. But the teams you played on, and even after you, when it was the Oshie and the EJ and the Bergie and the Shattenkirk, that whole era with Cam and everybody, those days were incredible too. And this group is awesome. But go ahead and then I'm gonna give you my connection to it as well.
I'll give you the Cole's notes, the Cliff's notes version. Um, for those of us on both sides of the border here. So after a practice, where Dougie used to live not far, like less than 5 minutes away off of Ladue from us, and he called me and said it was like 2:30. Said, "Hey, can you come over?" And I was like, "Okay," which was quite strange. We just practiced. I got home probably around 1:30, so he calls me an hour later, and I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I get over there, and his poor wife was crying. And I'm like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Go in the basement." It's like, "Let's go downstairs and talk." They just redone the main floor of their house, looked unbelievable.
I know.
Um, and he goes, "Well, management came to me and said they wanna, you know, they have a deal for me to go to Anaheim, but they're gonna give me 24 hours or 48 hours to make my decision, but I think I wanna stay." And I'm like, "Dougie, like, don't feel bad about us. Like, I think you should go. Like, they've got a really good team, and, like,
Huh?
I know as a friend, I'd hate to see you go, but, like, I think for you, like, that might be the right thing. Like, that's a good move for you." And, we just talked for, like, half hour, an hour, or whatever, just, reminiscing on some of the good times, right? Because he was unbelievable at, getting the team together.
Yeah.
Dinner parties and, like, Halloween parties were at his house, get-togethers. It was shared between him and Walt, but they both did an unbelievable job of doing things as couples, that the team together, we're always together doing things together. It made for a special bond with our group, and they were the catalysts behind that. Anyway, so fast forward to a couple days later, and Doug had told them that no, he thinks he wants to stay, and things quickly turned,
Right.
and they had said, "Well, then we're gonna have to waive you or move you, or we're gonna not play you." Like, they didn't play nice. Okay, so he was our best player. And so the trade worked out well for both teams, ended up getting Andy McDonald had a fantastic career. I'm only telling you the story to illustrate my point of the fact that having a no move does not mean you're not being moved. What it means is you have some say in where you're being moved. Because I'll tell you this, no one wants to stay where they're not welcome or they're not wanted. And it's very difficult to go back into a room. And I don't envy Pareko in the least. I don't envy the coaching staff. I don't envy even management to a degree, but it is not easy to go back into a room. And so what happens is we're human, right? He's gonna, it might not come for the rest of the year, but in the summer, this is just my opinion, you're gonna feel like they wanted to move me. Maybe it's time to move on. It's hard to move on from your first place. And I can understand why you wouldn't want to do that in the first 48 and 24 hours, 48 hours. But I will say this. My opinion is this is just as a player, no moves don't mean you're not being moved. It only means you have a choice where you're going. And so, um, and I could be wrong. He could play the rest of his career, but as a human, um, I just see that situation. I feel for everybody involved, but mostly for Colton, because there's no better example of what it means to be a Blue, to be a consummate gentleman, to do all the things he does in the community that no one ever sees. Um, I think he's at the top of the list, and I'll put him right next to Kelly Chase and what he's meant to the community. I will put I will put Colton Pareko right there
Wow.
next to him.
Well, and all the low them, um, that entire story that just galvanized the whole community. He was behind all of that. It
Yeah.
was him who created that relationship, in addition to some other players. Alexander Steen did as well, and Chaser had a relationship. But it was Pareko who really took it to the next level and helped create, Layla becoming an iconic figure as part of that Stanley Cup run. So, but I agree with you. And listen, I've been here for a long time before you came on, and it's like I typically don't get too emotional. To your point, the team has any right to ask a player to go. And the player, usually you're a really good player if you're able to negotiate that in your contract to get a no trade clause or a no move clause. In this particular case, it's a no trade. So you have the option. And so I think you're right. Um, but you should never be forced into doing something you don't want to do. So maybe it does become awkward, and maybe it does set uh the get the ball railing for you to eventually be moved. But I think now that communication can be had with the team and be like, okay, this is where I want to go. So go get a deal done with that team, and then I'll go. And the player
Yes.
should never accept a deal to it or feel like the first to accept a deal that they don't want to go to. So, but it got out, and I know there's been a lot of talk, Jamal, about who leaked it and whatnot. And being in this business for as long as I have been, it's like, leaks do happen. People put stuff out all the time. I've been on the receiving end of it on multiple occasions. It wasn't a big deal when the Mackenzie Weegar trade got out. That was out before he went to Utah from Calgary. Tyler Myers, it was rumored that he was going to Detroit. He didn't even play a game for Vancouver because they had a deal in place. That got out. And he was able to, steer his way to Dallas. That was the only place that he wanted to go. His mom lives there. He's now the first player to ever play in the NHL for the Dallas Stars who was born in Dallas. He wasn't raised there, but he was born there. So that's kind of a cool story. Big shout out to Dallas. So those things got out, and it wasn't made nearly as big of a deal. And I think that's why the Blues are having a hard time with it. Everyone's pointing the finger at them. Doug Armstrong comes out and says, "No, it was not us." And I went as far as to check everyone's phone records to make sure it didn't come from us. And I told them they would be fired. I was right there when he said it. Um, that they would be fired if I find out that it was you. Um, what do you make of all that? The whole leak. Is that big of a deal in your opinion?
Well, I think it's unfortunate because it puts Colton in a really tough spot, right? I think that's the part that is troublesome. I think that a lot of times, and I'm not privy to how these things happen, But I feel like if you're about to move a player that has a no movement, should you not first go to the player and get a list of potential and get that answer before negotiating that trade? I just think the order of operations, in my opinion, I don't understand.
Yeah, I looked at it.
Player has a no movement.
Yeah.
Don't you go to the player and say, "I'm going to be honest, we're looking to move you."
Hmm.
Do you have a list of teams that are an absolute no? Do you have a list of top 5 teams? We do need to have this conversation because people are calling about you.
Yeah, and what you're saying, it makes total sense. My experience has always been that the team doesn't typically do that, and they don't typically go to the player unless they have a deal. If they have a deal in place and it's worth it to go to the player, then they'll do that. And I agree. I think if you go to the player and say, "Hey, where do you want to go?" and you just focus on those teams, then maybe you avoid a lot of that. And listen, there's been other players who have been asked to waive their no trade, and it hasn't gotten out. And this is only a couple of occasions where I've seen this happen with St. Louis. Torrey Krug was one, then this one. But I'll say it now. I mean, Braden Shen was asked to move his no trade clause a year ago to go to Toronto. It never got out. I know there was a little bit of speculation about it, but it didn't get out. Certainly to the level of what we saw the last couple of days with Colton Parayko. So and getting back to the WA thing, yeah, I remember that because I remember asking him, "Hey, are you going to Anaheim?" They asked him to waive. He told me no. I reported that he wasn't going to go. He didn't. He turned it down. He said no to the team, and then he called me after a practice, not happy. And I know John Davidson and Larry Plow at the time. They had a meeting with him, and I think there was some conversation. Hey, you're going to be in the press box. You're not going to play. Basically, forced him to get the deal done. Chris Pronger is playing in Anaheim. And, I called Prongs and I'm like, "Hey, man, they're trading Doug Weight to the Ducks, to your team." And he's like, "For who?" And I said, "Andy McDonald." And he said, "No chance. Good one." Literally hangs up the phone. And Anaheim was in a situation, Brian Burke at the time, talked to Berkey about this too. They had to move on. They had to move some money or whatever,
Right.
and Andy Mack was considered a better player at that time than Dougie Weight, even at that stage. And Brian Burke knew that, but they had to make some financial concessions or whatever. So then Progs calls back literally a minute and a half later. He said, "Okay," he said, "You're right. This is happening." And Andy Mack, he did have a fantastic career in St. Louis, and it was a great run, a great move for the Blues. And W. Ray, it was great for him because he actually ended up going to the Islanders after Anaheim, where he extended his career, ended up becoming a big part of that organization, was assistant to the general manager and like an assistant coach. It was like the most unbelievable title in the history of hockey. And then he became a head coach and, really set himself up, made a lot more money, obviously being in New York, becoming a head coach and doing all of that. So it did kind of work out for everybody. But I feel bad. Listen, Colton can be a sensitive guy. He's one of the nicest human beings you're ever going to be. Everyone says that. And um, I think when you get a lot of these hardcore successful general managers, the best ones typically don't get too emotional, Jamal. They're not worried about hurting feelings and getting into your feelings and touching feelings, and they're just focused on one thing, and that is the hockey side, you know?
Yep.
Not to say that they're cold-hearted and whatever, but you know what I mean. I'm sure you played for general managers that some really cared about your personal feelings and others maybe not so much, right?
Yeah, I think that it's unfortunate because of what he's meant, to the community and to the team, winning a cup. Like, there's a lot of things that are layered in there, obviously, and not to mention, as we talked about, his extensive ties to the community. Um, I think even perhaps, it maybe they both sides, whoever was pulling those strings to get it out there, um, thought maybe they pressure him and use his niceness against him in some respect, right?
Yeah.
And good on Colton for sticking with his convictions and making that decision, and it's within his rights that he negotiated. So
Mhm.
it's really is a tricky thing with the no movement, and I always say, like, no move doesn't mean you're not getting moved. Like, You're getting moved. I am a little surprised if I thought that the Blues had time if they wanted at that point to get a I'm interested only because I'm interested in the way it works, not because I wanna report it like you do.
Yeah, but I'm
But
I'm with you. And I'm the same way.
but I'm
And I said,
interested in
it's
how that
funny.
process works.
I don't report everything I know anymore.
No,
Well,
I know.
different situation, and
So, but
it's almost more interesting in a way.
aren't you interested though to think, did they go back to Colton and say, "Clearly, we look to move you.
Mhm.
Can you give us a list of 3 or 4 or 5 teams that you would go to?"
Yeah, and
Because they still
maybe.
had time. They still had time to make a deal before Friday, right?
Yeah, but I think the team was looking for a specific return, Jamal, and listen, Robert Thomas. I think those were the initial conversations. I think there's only a handful of teams that could truly meet the asking price for what the Blues wanted for these players. I mean, we're talking about guys and Thomas and Kyrie who have 5 years left in their contract. You
Right.
know, I mean, Colton played for 4 years beyond here. This isn't a Justin Falk situation where you have 1 year left and you're going to Detroit and it's like, okay, I think that's an easier decision for him. Braden Shen, interesting how that one went down too, with the Islanders and the Blues all being at the same hotel. Maybe he doesn't say yes if he's not walking down the hall and getting in front of Matthew Darch and Matthew Martin and Patrick Waugh. Like that's an impressive group of executives there that I think can make you feel comfortable pretty quickly. Great group. Did you play with Matty Merritt? I don't know if you ever did.
No, just played against him. Always a honest stand-up guy, played the game the right way. I do know Darsh very well from, my days representing, the Blues, with the NHLPA, and he, very astute, smart guy, who was, I think we worked together a lot on the pension stuff and trying to help better that for the players, and, um, guy who does his homework and smart guy who knows the league extremely well, and I think that's a great spot for Braden. I think that
Yeah.
he'll fit in really nicely um to that group that's pushing to make the playoffs.
Yeah. But that's good to hear about Dutch. I've heard all good things about him. I've gotten to know Matty Martin a little bit. He's got the player's mentality. He's fresh out of the game.
Yeah.
So he's got that connection with the players. And and Patrick Waugh, right? Iconic goaltender, right? And he can get your attention pretty quick. So it's almost like, hey, once you get in the room with specific people, it's like you just they have the ability to make you feel comfortable and to accept what's on the table. So maybe it's a little bit different if they're not there and he just, maybe can say no. So, um, but I'm with you. The Colton thing, he's not making the decision for just the best of this season, right? And everyone's like, well, Buffalo's a good team. You're making a decision of where you're going to live the next 4 years beyond this season. And he's got a no trade clause. So if this means the beginning of the end for Colton Parayko in St. Louis, then okay, I think it's in his right and his camp's right to say, hey, you're going to move me. I'm gonna let you know where I wanna go and go get a deal done.
Yes. So, it really it does kind of change the dynamics of what you can ask. Like they're now not going to get the same return because now the options become limited, right? So
Leverage changes a little
the
bit.
leverage changes now. So if you play this out, what ends up happening is he gives you the list of 5 teams, let's say. Those 5 teams, they're also saying, well, we're only one of 5 that he'll go to. So if you want to move him, you're not getting the return you were going to get from Buffalo. And so then you have to do the analysis of, well, if Colton's at an AAV of 6.5, is that what he's at?
Yep.
Then you're thinking to yourself, we're not replacing that. Like we just keep him. Like so, you know, it'd be really interesting because you don't get the return you want anymore for him. Now you really don't want to move him, but now do you have to move him if we get to this place where he's not feeling wanted or loved or appreciated?
Yeah. Um, again, only a handful of teams can make some of these moves. And
Yeah.
based on yet like Utah that could put together a package to get Robert Thomas. They weren't willing to meet the asking price, but they could have. But I always say, like, you have to try essentially to get a top 3 pick. You have to, like, try to tank almost to get a top 3 pick, even to pick in the top 12 consistently year after year after year and be that bad. That takes years and years, and I think if you're Utah and you look at it like, yeah, we were so bad and they were bad on purpose, they had a bad situation in Arizona, they knew they were moving, they built up all these assets. I don't think they're looking to give them all up, or 3 of them for 1 player, you know? They may have been willing to give up 1 or 2, package it with a pick, but I don't blame the Blues for asking for the moon or whatever for a guy like Robert Thomas, who's an 80-point player, can be a 90-point player in the right team, could maybe be a 100-point player, and he's 26. He's got 5 years left at $8 million. If this guy was a free agent this summer, he'd be making 13, 14 million, whatever it would be,
Yeah.
talking to some people around the league. So there's some real value. You want that player, you better pay the piper. We're not giving him to you. And so I think similar to Colton Parayko, Buffalo put the best package on the table, and the Blues took their shot to see if they could get the deal done.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how things have changed so quickly, relatively quickly. Um, but unfortunately, that's what happens when you have a disappointing season, and the organization has to pivot, and they weren't as far along as they thought they were. And
Yeah,
there is a positive though. You're getting to see some of these younger players get elevated opportunities,
yeah,
and and they're going to fill some of those holes, and then you can do some movement, at the draft
yeah,
and later in the summer.
yeah. No, I'm with you. Real quick before I let you go, I was in San Jose last night. It's amazing how the team looks when Celebrini's on the ice and how they look when he's not on the ice.
Yeah,
Like 2 different teams.
this kid just doesn't stop working, eh? It's unbelievable. It's
He passes too much.
he is
You know what I mean? Like, this guy's so unselfish and he's so creative. Guys aren't even ready for it sometimes. Or it's like, I don't know, you have such a great shot. Finally, he shot and he scored. He's so lethal around that dot. His ability to just kind of take an extra step to the inside of the ice just to change the angle, and he gets so much on it. He's fun to watch, but he truly is their team. And I'm not saying they don't have other good pieces and they're not going to be good for a long time because they've got the Misa kid who's young. They got Real Smith who's young. Um, you know, and the goaltender's fine and everything. I mean, but he truly like elevates them to a different level. I don't know if they're going to make the playoffs though, Jamal. It's going to be hard.
yeah, they're in a tough spot. It's not only are they bunched in with so many teams, they got to hop around. It's just it's they're gonna have to go on a run. They're gonna have to win 8 of 10 and do it again, 6 of 8. Like it's not gonna be easy because someone's gonna go on a little bit of a run, and I'm not sure if that we'll see. But what's most impressive for me for Macklin is not only his compete, his engine, all those things, but how quickly he takes the puck from the wall to the middle of the ice, and his attacking mentality, um, and his work rate is so elite. It's
Mhm.
reminds you of Sidney Crosby, and then uh, venture to say he's more responsible on the right side of the puck at this age than Crosby was, and it's just crazy that he's on pace for 120 points as a 19-year-old.
I know, I love it. Which what Crosby did, right? I think Crosby had 100 points at 18 or whatever it was. So, and I feel like he put up some points last year too, didn't he? I mean, Macklin, I mean, he
Yeah, but
close to 70, baby.
he got hurt. So he's hurt to start the year, and he ended up with like 60 something points. Um, but I don't know if anyone really saw this coming. Like
Yeah.
we knew he'd be good. I thought he would be more like Taser, like 65 to 75, and now he's like in a different atmosphere.
And who else stand out from the deadline to you? I mean, you had John Carlson, obviously a little bit of a surprise. Kadri goes from Calgary to Colorado. He's under contract till he's like 55 years old or whatever it is. So it's like, I mean, it'll be good in the short term. That now he's won a state under cup with them. He marries them. They marry him. I always like those type of deals. You bring in a guy who you know, who knows the room, who the core group of players know too. That's way easier adjustment. Like that's going to be a good fit in Colorado for Kadri.
Yeah, I think that was a smart move because you're bringing in a guy who's been there before. When you have strong personality like McKinnon around as well, He knows how to like take those, hairy eyeball looks that are going to come and with stride. I think bringing someone in doesn't know him, that might be a little difficult. I
Yep.
also think it's a really smart move because typically when you bring a player of that status who's really good onto a team that's already had a ton of their success, everyone's starting to think about, well, whose ice time is he taking away? Well, right away they have, I believe, 30th or 31st or 32nd power play. Well, he can change the dynamic of their power play and hopefully get that going for them. So that was a really, really smart move there. I think Utah made some nice moves. I like Minnesota, what they did to get themselves ready for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to be unfortunate. I think you're going to see Dallas and Minnesota in the first round. Like they both had unbelievable years, but one of them's going to be out after the first round. Crazy.
It is crazy. What's not crazy is Dobbs tires and Addis centers, baby.
Oh, so I got a story for you. Dobbs takes care of you. I'll tell you what happened. So we're building a house out in St. Charles. So I go by there and the kids, everyone makes fun of me for going to look over there too many times. Well, I go over there and I ended up got a leaky tire. So I must have hit a nail over there at the construction site. I got to take it into Dobbs. They were so good. They changed the two tires. I go back a week later because I can't help myself. I want to go look. I get another tire.
Oh my God.
So I have to replace all four tires. Now I just park on the street and walk all the way up to go look because, but they'll tell you what, the moral of the story, Dobbs, doesn't matter what you try, a car, truck, light truck, van, SUV, hybrid, EV, they take care of it. They diagnose your car. They can do all kinds of things. They give you oil change, whatever that needs to be done. But most importantly, they keep you safe. So they got me in there. They took care of it. They showed me what the issue was, if it can be replaced, not replaced, where I am on the life of the tire. They're honest up front, great pricing, took care of it. And the next day, ordered it from a different store. They have 42 plus locations. They took care of me back on the road, able to take my wife's truck to up here to Wisconsin, and she's able to drive mine for the weekend. So wouldn't have been able to do it without Dobbs. Go to Dobbs.com for more.
All right. I love it. I love it. Where you having dinner when you get back in town?
Oh, Bartolino's. My favorite, Bartolino's South, Bartolino's Austria, Kisses Pancake and Dang. Chris is at the Dog Inn. Our favorite, Bartolino's Twin Oaks, great bar area right there as well. Forge many lasting relationships with their customers. Their family model, cook good food, serve plenty. 50 plus years in business. Only two places to dine, at Bartolino's or at home. That's it. That's it. Those are the only places.
Hey, I'm putting you on spa, baby.
Oh, dude, you are trying to steal my sponsor. I know you. Before you're gonna have a hot tub and a cold tub and a sauna, just like me. Before you know it. Well, you know what? They're a local master spa dealer with two locations: Sunset Hills in Missouri and Overland Park, Kansas. Mike Leahy's the owner. His daughter will be there to help you out, whatever you need. They are master spas, an American hot tub and swim spa manufacturer located in Fort Wayne, Indiana. American owned and made. They are the largest hot tub and swim spa manufacturer in the U.S. I'm getting one. Michael Phelps, chili goat tubs, cold tubs important. Angie Haas takes care of you down there at the Sunset Hills location of Spas and More's offers quality hot tubs, swim spas, cold tubs, infrared saunas for all of your health and wellness and relaxation needs. Turn your backyard into the oasis of your dreams with a master spas from Spas and More. Spas and More located at 12957 Gravois Road in Sunset Hills, where we put the in spa.
The Bruiser went feral Fowler jammer.
Oh, bad timing. Take guys out of the lineup. Need to get that lottery.
5 defensemen last night. They were both there played almost 33 minutes.
Seriously?
And Bruce Mario, all of a sudden, is like looking like a player too. Like he played like 26 minutes last night. Listen, I've been through this before covering Blues teams that go into that transition. I do kind of enjoy it. You had a rhythm, you want to be competitive, you want to cover the playoffs, you want the team to have success and be in the playoffs, want the organization to make money, all of that. But I do like to see what they have when some of these young guys, when they get an extra, little more responsibility and how they handle it. So that's kind of fun to watch,
That's exciting. It's exciting for seeing what's coming, and it helps make them make decisions for next year, right? Like, because
Yeah.
there's only so many roster spots. Some of those guys are going to be pushing, and they're going to get their opportunity. It's incumbent upon them to take it and run with it. This is how
Yeah.
guys establish NHL careers.
No, I'm with you. All right. Best of luck at regionals.
Thanks, bud. One down, two to go.
There you go. Keep me posted. We'll be in touch.
All right. Take
See you,
care.
buddy. All right. Thanks to Jamal Mayers for joining us. Always great to catch up with Jammer. Been so much going on, and I hope you enjoyed the show. We came out a day later today, so with everything going on yesterday, and I was able to sit down with Blues GM Doug Armstrong. You can check it out on the Blues social media channels, specifically Twitter and Facebook. I know they put the entire interview up there. We aired a portion of it last night during the game on FanDuel Sports Network. So listen, now we move on. Rest of the season. We'll have the playoffs before you know it and everything else that comes with it. Um, First Community brings us hockey sense each and every week. And when I think about retirement, I think of something that people do when they're much older than me, to be honest with you. But here's the thing, it's never too early to start saving for retirement. So with an IRA, you can potentially put tax-deferred savings away for your retirement, lock in some great rates. You can also open a house savings account to build a cushion for unexpected or routine medical expenses, because you never know when those are going to pop up. First Community offers IRA and HSA accounts, and there are no cost to you for those accounts. There are some eligibility requirements, but now's a great time to learn more about it. Check it out at firstcommunity.com. We thank all our friends at First Community. Leo Roofing, 313-920-5703. Lerner's Diamonds. They're cheap, fun, your one-stop party shop. Download that app today. Frontenac Detailing, Kirkwood Fence, everybody who brings us hockey sense from Half Coast Studio as Maddie's on the ones and twos tonight. And of course, Jamal Mayers for joining us on this edition of Hockey Sense. I'm Andy Strickland. Reminding you to keep your head up and your stick on the ice. Thanks for joining us and for supporting the show each and every week here live from Half Coast Studios. We'll see you next Friday, our regularly scheduled time coming your way next Friday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody.